Welcome, everybody. We're here. We're here again, and thank you for joining another essential conversation here at Wellbeings. And we have quite the well-being here with us today. Welcome, Leslie. And
Thanks, Nigel. Thanks for having
and
me.
wow, it's a real honor to have you. And let me introduce this. There's so much to say, but I'm going to keep it brief. And then I want to quote something from her book that I really also want you to kind of her book being the Cult of the Black Card. You can see that in the background there, the book cover. But let me share. This is why this angel is here today, because for me, a lot of the time I work with people who are in the midst of divorce and go through that process. That is often nobody comes out a winner, and it's often a very traumatic experience. And to find love and law in one person doing this work inspired me to want to track this lovely lady down. And that's what was my motivation to have this call today. So through the lens for 30 years, Leslie has had a career in matrimonial law and her own. She's been in a marriage for decades, and she's an attorney and a relationship coach. Now, Leslie offers timely insight on love, law, and realizing a life partnership for a balanced, fulfilled life. Never one who would fit the mold of a conventional divorce lawyer, Leslie brings a modern outlook to relationships by challenging norms, affirming meaningful truths, and providing a framework for modern courtships and couples of all stages. And I want you to hear this. This is what really got me here. A little snippet from Leslie's book. And it's Leslie wants more than anything in this age of turmoil, pandemic, megalomania, hopelessness, and despair. She wants to give you hope. She wants to give you hope. And I want to show you that if you believe in life and love, they will believe in you too. Like how often do you get that when you step into a divorce proceedings with a lawyer or a solicitor, depending on what part of the world? You don't get that often. So Leslie, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. It's really a pleasure to be able to speak with you today, Nigel.
Yeah, well, wow. So yeah, I think we're all in for a treat. And I suppose let's kind of start with, the journey, What had you go on this trajectory, imagining with law, first of all? What inspired you to go into this profession in the first place?
Oh, to be a lawyer?
Yeah.
Well, I guess I always had a sense of justice growing up. But the truth is, I really wanted to be an actress. And my mother, I had an opportunity to audition for something really special. And I won't give it away because it is in the book. Because the book encompasses parts of my life that are very important, which leads me to be who I am today and why I believe what I believe. But my mother, who grew up in the Depression, said to me, "We're not pretenders. Lawyer, doctor, or business. Pick one," basically. So I guess from an early age, I always had a sense that no matter where you are in life and what you have, or what you think you have, there will be people that have far less emotionally, financially, spiritually, and there'll be people that have more. And you just have to be okay with where you are. And through law, you can help others be better for themselves. And I know that doesn't sound possible because people think of law as only in the negative sense. People sue for this or sue for that or divorce. But law helps us be civil and in most parts of the world define the rules of civility toward each other and some sense of fairness or justice. Law does not mean there's a winner or loser. As we know, in divorce, there are no winners. That is the very first thing I will tell a client when they walk through my door. If you think you're here to win, you're not. It's not about winning. It's about changing your life the way it is because you don't like it or it's not working. It might be a bad situation, but you're not there to beat up on the other person who you united with and possibly brought children into the world with. So I will say that probably the area of the law chose me when I took a job in California, right out of law school, which I went to in New York. And I really loved it. What I loved was the people. I didn't love what stage they were in life, because they were often very broken or sad or angry, whatever stage they were in. But I felt like I could make a difference if they let me in and heard me, not just as their lawyer to beat up on the spouse that they wanted to kill at that very moment, but didn't want to spend the rest of their lives in jail, kind of thing.
Wow. I like that. I think you've probably perfected that space you hold for the other, to allow them to let you in through these years of craft, of being able to sit with people and really create that open space where all of them is welcome, and at a time where that's so essential in this massive life shift that's happening for them.
Yes.
A lot of the time I'm imagining they may have friends, but there's a way in which, what I'm picking up from some of the ways that you work, Leslie, is that there's a way in which they're feeling accompanied, and that those initial stages where you're there with them in it, and you're not colluding with their defenses around wanting to make the other person the scapegoat, but really wanting to be with them in a way where they can be with themselves and you, and more meaningful ways to help them through this process if they decide to go through this process.
Sure. I mean, when people come to my office, or probably any divorce lawyer's office, there's a whole set of why they're angry, why they think they want out of a marriage or a relationship. And very often it's the other person's fault. Now it takes two to tango. It takes two to say I do, and it takes two to stop communicating in a relationship, because communication can be uncomfortable at times and challenging, but that's what leads to the ultimate breakdown. And it's easier to say their fault. I've done everything in this relationship, or I've put all in, but it's never that way. There's always three sides, I'd like to say. Spouse one, spouse two, and somewhere in the middle is the actual reality. But the way people feel can't be denied. Your feelings are your feelings, but you have to understand what those feelings truly are. And often what I recommend is, before you jump ship, figure out what it is that's making you unhappy. And it's usually the person that's the primary caregiver that has given up a career, an education, or advancement to stay at home and raise the children. Okay, so we're not talking about the typical power couple that gets married and they don't have children and they're just going along in their careers, and maybe they've made that decision and they're happy with that, and their focus is each other all the time, and it's completely different. I find this is more divorces occur, I feel like, where there are children and family, because no one really tells you after you get married and the honeymoon is over and marital bliss, and years down the road you have this family, how that impacts the we. What happened to the we? And what happened to the me? So the primary caregiver gives up so much, while the person out in the world who has still some social life, has a work life, work friends, some other status, doesn't really realize what's going on. And the person at home isn't always appreciated, because running a household is very difficult work. Raising children is the hardest job in the world and the least recognized. So, right. So what we do.
Can I pause there for those seconds?
Sure.
Because there's something you're saying is so important. Even the way that it's said is like the main caregiver in the house who has to give up their career or completely stop their development and whatever they're doing to rear the children. And then anybody, and even think of it, not even like the head caretaker in the house or the caregiver, but when we overextend for any length of time, what's never far away after that is a sense of resentment, is a sense of
Oh,
being hard done by or being taken for granted. This is like a natural law. In any overextension, this is what goes on in the background. And then I hear you say, and the other spouse doesn't know what's going on back in the home so much because they're busy thinking, maybe fear based, needing to make money for the family, so to build the security. So they are way off doing their thing. So the communication's already breaking down there at that early
sure.
stage.
Sure. I mean, if you're a team, you always have to recognize what your partner is doing, what they're giving up, what their needs are. You know, I work with a lot of women, and it's not because I don't work with men. It's just over the years, that's what's come into my office because I've helped so many women take a step back and say, okay, I was a career person when I met my spouse, and I'm using women in general because there's still generally the female energy is the primary caregiver. Um, I was when I met him and got married, and I did a whole bunch of things, and then I stopped to have a family, and maybe I didn't take those skills and use them throughout the time frame that my children were growing up, and now I'm kind of stuck. So where do I go from here? Now, a lot of times that's why you end up with 3 children or more because you don't have someone to help you figure out how to now evolve from career, parent, back into career. And the world isn't really a forgiving place.
It's not. It's not.
It's
And I think I shared this with you when we spoke, Leslie. There's this. I've met this in the recent months with clients, and I hear it often over the years, but I heard it a lot in the recent months. And it was a woman who had one or two women who or that have come in, and they said, "Yeah, well, I'm when I and they're thinking about having more children, and I would invite them to really think about why they're having more children." And the answer that's been coming in more often these days is, well, if I have another child, then I don't have to focus on anything else. I don't have to focus on me. I can go back into that bubble. I can go back into that zone, and it means that I don't have to deal with the other troubles as much, although they're just piling up. But yeah,
sure.
getting to know that's a huge sort of escape isn't the right word, but where there's a sort of falling back into this sort of dull, familiar safety because there's a belief there's no other option.
Well, I'll take that and I'll say having that additional child becomes the purpose as opposed to yourself
Yeah.
because you don't know how. And I've told countless women who 6, 7 years down the road after they've had the next child, they're right back in the same place, but now it's worse because it's that many years later and they still didn't do anything for themselves. So we all know children get older. They all go to school. They all manage to do that. And while they're in school, there are many jobs in many professions that would welcome the parent between those school hours because you're not really going there to make the money you might have made in the career you had before. You're really going there for a sense of purpose for yourself to get outside the home, get yourself back into the workforce, and get yourself some camaraderie with some other people so that when you look at your life, everything isn't so magnified. The problems that become magnified are because you're only in your bubble, and once you're out, I don't care if you're making $8 an hour answering a telephone or working in a dentist office, making 25 an hour or whatever it is. But once you're out in that bubble and people will appreciate you and your spirits are lifted, your self-esteem returns in a different sense. We're not talking about the parenting sense, we're talking about the you sense. And then the skills you had in your prior career all of a sudden come flooding back and you start using them in a different way. And I love this example. So there's this woman I know who has 6 children. And when she had her second, she decided to go back to work. And she did just that. She found herself in a dentist office. Many years later, 6 children later, same husband later, she runs the whole show. Now, she didn't start out that way, but she realized that my children are going to be okay. I'm going to raise them, but I have to be important to me too. Because once you're not important to you, you're also not important to your spouse. And people don't realize that. And it's not that your spouse is doing anything, it's kind of like you just disappear. The person they knew isn't the person they're now with, because they're also not important, because that we becomes a part. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I think, again, when I hear you share these examples of women, there's a way in which they stop moving towards life. They stop moving towards the aliveness and enlivening capacities of life, and they get pulled back to the dull safety of an unfulfilled life. And where in the past, in these pods of children rearing, a lot of the time there's other esteem, being esteemed in the other and others, by being esteemed in the things you do, and maybe looking for the validation or the approval or the recognition from the husband or from the kids doing what you want them to do. But it's not self-esteem. It's outside of the self, and it's in others. It's in the overdoing or the overcompensating. And I think that's a lot of what you're sharing here. There's a huge outpouring to the family and a neglect towards the self that starts to fester over time.
Right, because you become everything other than that little person who had a dream, and then you give it up to be, Patty PTA, Kathy chauffeur, Cindy the chef, whatever, Lucy laundry, whatever it is. It's a role you take on, and you want to be really good at it, right? Because that's how people generally are when they want to be successful at anything. You take it on and you want to be the best you can be. And then you want to be the best spouse you can be, but you don't always have a lot left in the tank, And when you're in a relationship with someone and you make a decision to bring another human into the world, you really have to have that conversation about, well, if you're gonna go out and continue your career X, Y, and Z, and I'm gonna be at the stay at home, maybe there's got to be some happy medium, because let's face it, when economies fail, the stay at home parent that never reutilized their skills or put money away for a rainy day, they can't help save their family. I've often had this happen where spouses come in and the wage earning spouse doesn't tell the spouse at home they didn't get the bonus. This because the economy was bad. I got a pay cut. I'm not getting the promotion, but yet they're still spending the same. And then there's no rainy day fund, because I've had people say to me, well, I don't know if I want to have an account separate from my spouse. I'm like, well, did you have one before you met? Yes. Okay, well, then keep it. That doesn't mean you can't have a joint life. But sometimes having that set aside, it's not because you're planning to run away. Maybe you want to buy a great gift for your family. Or maybe when things don't work out, you'll save your family.
You're talking about sort of also these sort of old family values of where closeness and togetherness means merger and codependency and no separation or no individualization. And that's, again, very, very toxic sort of thing, not to mention having strain on the family from a financial perspective. But just again, this merger that happens where you don't, where what love is this thing where I don't let you go, and we're all joined in and we get cabin fever, and it doesn't work over a long term,
I mean, don't you think that when you fall in love, you fell in love with an individual, and that maintaining part of that individuality and mystery. And yes, I mean mystery. I don't mean deceit. So that mystery that keeps that spark alive. I mean, let's face it, folks. If you meet somebody at 25 and you're together till you're 50, looks will fade, but good humor, respect, love, a little bit of mystery, that won't. That keeps
Yeah,
you together.
yeah, and the person you married when you were 25, expect them to go through a dying process where they're going to get to meet new parts of them instead of pining for the 25-year-old husband who's now 38, and he's not where we have to go through this letting go process and deepening that in the relationship. There's many seasons to a marriage,
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you think that what you feel like at 25 is what you're going to feel like at 35, 40, you're in for a rude awakening. You better put your seatbelt on, because first of all, life, not only will it give you many blessings and successes, but you never know the challenges that are going to come your way. And I don't like to use the word failure. I know people say, you have to fail to succeed. Well, I like to say you have to be challenged to succeed, because when you're challenged, you step up. I feel like people take a step up. And, you know, don't look at other people. Don't look on social media. Don't assume because what you see is what that reality is. People also don't know your reality. So you can go out there, I always say, fake it till you make it, get dressed, do your hair, look good. Not everyone has to know how you're feeling on the inside. You might be feeling insecure today, or you don't know what you want today, but you have to believe in yourself, and you have to tell yourself every day, I can do this. I can do that. I can change the way I feel or the way I act. I can't change someone else, which includes our spouses, people. We can't change the other person, but we can change how we react to them,
exactly,
you know,
exactly.
and start a process.
I saw something that moved me almost to tears today, and it was this very thing. And a couple came into my clinic, and they're working on being together for 15 years or whatever. And to see them for the first time in 15 years turn to one another and share with the other how they thought the other was feeling, to really mirror back to them what they imagined, and then the other one said yes, but also listening, and then the other partner saying okay, and giving a full understanding, and the tears, the seeing one another, the putting themselves into each other's shoes to understand the burden that they've been carrying, not blaming, not sniping, not trying to get one-upmanship, but this sort of meeting that is so fundamental in a marriage and in any relationship, that we keep coming back to that sort of deep sense of connection. And that's what I loved about your work. In a way, it feels like you provide a space, Leslie, where the heart is accessible, where your heart's there with them, and their hearts start to feel safe and open. So I'm sure you see and feel a lot of tears in the space, like where they're letting it go. And that's what I saw today, and that's such a beautiful witnessing to see
Yeah.
that. Whoa, that renewal almost in this case, it was in a therapeutic encounter with each other, and I feel that warmth is what you bestow upon your clients, and I
I
think that's
try. I try. I mean, a lot of times, I don't think people realize that people don't just knock on a divorce lawyer's door. And I would like to tell people that most people, when they ask me what I do, I say I'm the marriage lawyer. I don't say I'm the divorce lawyer. I'm the marriage lawyer. So, because I believe in relationships, and marriage comes in many forms for people. So, it's not just, walking down the aisle. You can be married in your heart without a piece of paper. So, it's that commitment, right, that you see with people. And a lot of times when people come into a lawyer's office, they're just there for information. They're not there. They're not ready to pull the trigger. And I feel it's my responsibility, and I can't speak for any other lawyer in my profession, to sit and explore with the client why they're unhappy and what their options are. And 9 times out of 10, they are not unhappy with their life or their spouse. They're really just unhappy with where they are in their life, and they want help. They want to try and figure out what the next steps are because they think divorce is the answer, because they can't find a way to communicate with their spouse how they're feeling, because in a lot of ways they feel either their spouse is overburdened with, caring for the family financially or work, or they won't understand, you know, but that's a lot of assumptions to make. So a lot of times I tell people to write it down. Write down what you're feeling, write down what your goals are. When you get to a comfortable place, take your spouse out on a date, not a typical like let's go to dinner type of thing, whether it's a walk in the park, a pic, somewhere quiet where you can say, I really want to have a conversation with you uninterrupted by phones, text messages, kids, dogs, whatever it is. And it doesn't have to be this long conversation. You just can open the story to say, hey, this is really where I'm at, and this is what I've been feeling. And I haven't had a chance to tell you, and it's making me feel kind of bad. And maybe you can help me, get out of this or feel unstuck, because you're going to find that your spouse doesn't see you that way. They see you as probably the heart of the home, the dynamo holding it all together. They just don't always express it. They're expressing it is bringing the money in to pay the bills. So unless they're not mind readers, our spouses are not, we're not mind readers. So they're not mind readers. So you have to tell them what you're feeling, not accusing someone, but like what you're feeling about you and where you are and what could we do to strengthen this, because that strengthens our relationship. Because believe me, both people in a relationship are well aware when there is a step back or, less communication,
Like elephant in the room.
right? Most people are aware of that. So someone has to bring it up.
And this is what we talk about this in our men's work, with men, because sometimes, and I don't want to categorize all men, is that they avoid that pink elephant in the room. They avoid that turbulence. But the job of the masculine is to come and penetrate those experiences with going in, and instead of waiting for the woman to come in and share it, and sometimes she's so overwhelmed or so undernourished that she just lets it fester, and the man is in avoidance. And the job there is to come in and presence what has been felt, presence the I'm noticing we're like boats that passing at nighttime here. Like I'm really curious. I feel a lot of resistance. I feel resistance in me. To dare to have those difficult conversations that can really set you free, I suppose, is essential. And in your initial sessions with your clients, when they come in looking for information, and then you send them off after sitting with them and exploring with them and inviting them to have this conversation with their partners, what happens normally in those situations?
Well, sometimes I don't see those clients for a couple of years because they go back and they try. Or they take other advice, which is to set up their own life and figure it out. Sometimes people stay together and I never see them again. And sometimes they're back in 6 months. But usually they come back and they're more informed. They've done an analysis of their life and what it could look like or might look like. And sometimes I feel like people don't have the conversation because they're scared of being rejected by their own spouse. They're more afraid of that. And sometimes they think it's better just to walk away, which I think is sad.
Yeah, they need some professional intervention in those
Right.
circumstances.
There's no doubt about it. And that to me is where it's like a couples kind of intervention where they've reached a point where they can't communicate with each other, especially if they have in the past. Um, you know, but I really admire the people that step back, and I don't see them for years. They try, and then sometimes they come and they just say, "We've tried, we're at this place," but they're not now in such a hostile place with each other. They just have come to the point where they've accepted that their relationship lasted for as long as it was supposed to, and they love each other truly enough to say, "We're both ready to move on." And that's okay too.
Yeah.
It's okay. Look, sometimes people get married for the wrong reasons, move in with someone for the wrong reasons. And not everyone is meant to be together for 100 years or 20 or 5. It depends. So you have to be okay with you, but everything you do is a reflection of who you really are. So I always feel it's better to let go with love because, especially if you have children, you're never getting away from that other person because your children are going to grow up and have all kinds of things that are going to include, hopefully, both parents. And what happens when there are grandchildren? I mean, I do know plenty of people who have divorced and remarried and have these huge blended families, including in laws and all. And they all go away together and they have holidays together, and what great thing you are showing your children is that love can exist, not just in a vacuum, but for all of us, for all time. And there's different types of love. I will always love, the father of my children. I don't have to be in love with him, but I can respect him and we can have a relationship so that he can go on and have a relationship and so can I. And then our children are better and more well-adjusted, emotional young children and adults because they see that this can be accepted and normal and that it's better to have love than hate, where you can't be in the same room together and can't acknowledge the fact that some relationships end
Yeah.
and
So
new ones begin.
yeah, and you're so right there, Leslie. And it takes, what you're talking about there is, to see that sort of massive big family gatherings where there's different, exes, ex partners, their families, the work that's required with for most of the people involved to make that happen. The dedication, the sort of development to be able to allow that to happen is really a big part of it. But coming back to the collateral damage of when you hang out in the hate and dismiss the love for yourself first of all, and
Yes.
to love in yourself is really learning to love all these parts you learn not to love. First and foremost, it's not manicures and pedicures. It's really been able to love those parts that you're projecting at times onto your used to be beloved, and to be able to, because a lot of the, I'd say probably maybe 15, 15%, 20% of the clients I see are the children of divorced families, where there's such a poverty that happens in the family unit when there is a separation, and they're bathing in the hurt and in the blame and in scapegoating the children or divorcing the children as well. It just can get so, it goes on for generations is what I'm saying.
Sure.
And it just haunts the whole family line, and it keeps the family kind of broken, and then the children, they go and get married and the same thing plays out. And I remember being, I don't know, 12 or 13, and I come from Ireland in a very Catholic family, and there's nobody divorcing, like it's almost unheard of. It's just strict Catholicism has them all chained in relationships that don't work. And but I remember seeing when I was at school and as I got a little bit older, divorce, and I always had this fear. And then I started to see the understanding the family dynamics, where I could see after there was children who came from divorced families, how they had struggles in relationships. Some of them. We all have struggles in relationships, but I was able to be sensitive to that at a young age, and I was like, wow. I was cautious to ever date a girl who came from a broken family. That's how vigilant I was as a young kid, and I was picking up on that sort of dynamic. And then I could pick up on and these was two instances where I was in a relationship with a broken family, and I could feel the pain and the hurt that was there, and it was evident. It doesn't go away. It kind of lingers in the space, and you know, when you have an encounter, Leslie, with, and I imagine more often than not, you'd meet the woman who's in distress or despair or in anger and in frustration. What have you been able to see them be able to do? Do you ever see them being able to transform that rage they have towards their partner as being the cause of the problem, to be able to take back some ownership of that problem?
Sure. I think that really what it is fear. So if you've given up so much of yourself and the ability to take care of yourself and stand on your own 2 feet, I think that anger comes from fear. Because maybe you do really want out, but you don't know that you can get out. You know, and I always tell people, you know, sometimes a lot of families might have money and back you up, but it's not about your family, it's about you. So what can you do for you? And I think for women who realize, like, sometimes you just have to take a step back and say, okay, well, I always wanted to finish, I don't know if it's college or university or whatever it is. Well, why don't you do that now? If you have the time now, if your children are in school, there's so many online versions. If you can't go in person, why don't you pursue what you want now? Don't, you know, put the horse before the cart before the horse. You know, thinking about your life 3 years from now. So if you're really, really miserable and you're going to pull the trigger and you're going to reorganize your family, I like to say, and get a divorce, it's not going to be fun the first year. It's just not, because you're taking one household and dividing it into two of everything. Not everyone can afford to do that. Most people can't. Your lifestyle doesn't go up, it goes down, you know, and you don't look at celebrities and social media. There's a reason why a lot of celebrities don't get married in legally binding, because if you live in, like, the state of California, everything they earn after marriage is 50-50 split. Well, they don't need each other financially. They need each other emotionally. So they're in a different position. So, you know, having children outside of a marriage where you're legally committed to each other, well, that's for people that can really afford that. Like, this is the reality. You have to tell people. So women become less angry when they become less fearful. And I feel when they take ownership of their life and make a decision, whatever it is, to themselves, to be able to rise up to whatever it is they want to be, then you can make a decision 18 months from now, 24 months from now, that if your relationship is still not working out, then you can move on. Like, it's not in a vacuum, because especially if you don't have any indication about your finances, you know, women give control of that up too. You know, if you're going to be a stay-at-home caregiver, be the CEO of your household, which means you also pay all the bills. You might not be the earner, doesn't matter. You're splitting the detail, because you being at home allows this one to be out. At least you know what's your mortgage payment, what your cell phone bill is, how much does gas cost a month, what are the grocery bills. A lot of people give that up. Now you know nothing, and you're out of control. And that's the other place where anger comes from, is feeling you have no control over your own life. You don't have control over other people, but you can control yourself. So it may seem charming in the beginning, you know, to have someone taking care of you and paying all the bills. But after a while, Like, you are responsible for your life. So if you don't want to be angry, get busy working at it.
Yeah,
You know?
you're so right. This you're talking about. We talk about we call that deadening. It's the romantic storybook Walt Disney sort of I'll take care of you, and the reality is then you stop moving towards life and you feel deadened and burdened and resentful eventually.
Yeah.
And disempowered is really what we're talking about
Yeah.
here. And then you're invalided again, and then of course all the emotions come up. But one thing I often hear in my practice, and I hear it at least once a week with new clients who come in, is when is the time to leave? When do you have to know you're flagging a dead horse here? And when do you know that you need to commit more? When do you know a relationship has ended? And I'm curious about what you discover to be an answer to that in what you see play out.
I really believe there are people out there that do try it all. And you do it really for yourself, because at the end of the day, you have to look in the mirror at yourself and be able to live with yourself and put your head on your pillow and go to sleep. If you have tried everything that you know to try and make that relationship work, whether it's therapy on yourself, sometimes you get the tools that help the relationship and help you bring the relationship back to where you might want it to be, or push it to another level. So if you're willing to work on yourself, if you've done that, if you've offered to your loved one the ability to work on it together, they may deny you. If you've taken all those steps where you are aware of your financial situation, you have an idea of what your life will look like when you're uncoupled from this person, and you've taken stock of who you're responsible for in your life, your children, whether they're small or medium or large, and where your role will fit. And you just know that there is nothing else you can do. You've done everything you can do. And if your partner's not willing to come along, then it's time to leave. Then you'll know. But you'll leave from a vantage point of strength and not weakness and fear. That is the worst time to try and legalize a divorce, because you don't think clearly. You are thinking with your heart and your emotions, not with your head. And I hate to say this, divorce is a business arrangement. It's the separating of finances and the reorganizing of a family. And the only thing that matters are the children and how you reorganize that family so that they feel whole and that they don't carry, your anger, your fear, your challenges or unwillingness on into the rest of their life. So if they see a parent who's working on themselves, who's getting therapy, who's in a better frame of mind, who's positive, they won't take that negativity, as you were talking about before, the broken, into their relationships. And even if they do at some point, they will know that they can get help because they will have seen it in their own home and they will work on themselves. We all need work. It's just everyone works on themselves differently and different types of work. What do they say? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. But you can
you can influence.
Show it. You can show. You can lead by example.
Yeah.
You
can. I've seen people come from broken families, but or like really traumatic experiences in a family, and someone in the family, one of the parents, taking a leadership role of being able to take ownership, express vulnerability, let the family grieve together, let there be this sort of sense of real connection where everybody is got a voice, where there's not like conform or there's a consequence, where there's just this open dialogue and where they can share and show their vulnerabilities. And I think when that can happen, it doesn't matter what's going on in the life of that family, that the siblings or the children really get such a gift from when that happens. They carry that on down through the generations, and as opposed to what we see often is just familiar hauntings that come in from generation to generation, and that's just because there wasn't an intervention or someone or enough support that was sought at the time, at the certain stages, But it's really powerful, and I I love that idea of the work we have to put in, to be able to. So I see it. I see siblings. And I have one group where we've got the children of a divorce. We've got people going through a divorce at the moment, and then we have the sort of parents of children who are divorcing, and there's a wonderful cross pollination of triggers and experiences and shares and vulnerabilities and grieving that starts to come in, and exactly what you named is what's required. Is like you have to do the work yourself first. You have to go and meet yourself. You have to meet your internal landscape, and you have to go through a sort of a spiritual journey or a pilgrimage back to find out who you are, and that rite of passage that we often so forget about as adults, to come back home, and that's the foundation, and then you expand that to your partner if that's possible.
Sure. I mean, look, relationships that last always have some sort of rebirth or renewal, because you're growing. Both individuals are growing and maturing and at different rates of speed and in different areas of their life. And you have to be able to ebb and flow with your partner. That doesn't mean you're always happy about their growth. We're humans, and things could be going on in your world. And, maybe you have to take a step back or whatever it is. But those relationships that last, it's because both partners recognize that growth is good. Evolution is good. That strengthens and deepens the love bond. It's not a reason for insecurity and trying to hold on so tight. So there are many types of, I don't like to say deaths, but there are like little deaths in relationships that happen that aren't the end of the relationship. They're the beginning of the next chapter in the relationship. I like to say relationships aren't dead. They're just going through a phase. So if you remember that, you're like, oh, maybe we're in another phase, because the phase that you're in is growth and it's taking you to the next level. Some people hold on so tight to the first phase or the second phase that they can never get to the next level because they don't ever want to let go of what was. You have to live in the what is. And
there's this wonderful image I'm seeing. It's on social media sometimes. It's this picture where there's somebody angry pointing at the partner saying, "You've changed," and then the partner saying, "Yeah, we're supposed to,"
Yeah, you're supposed to change. And I just feel that when two people know they've hit the end of the road, my advice to them is let that relationship end or die. But that doesn't mean the love you had for each other can't become another relationship, as we were just talking about, a respect, a friendship. You're the parent of my child. I love you for that, and I respect you for that, and it just makes everyone's life so much more enriched, and your children's lives so much more enriched. We don't just have to love one way. It's kind of like friends, right? We have all types of friends in our life. We have our nearest and dearest, couldn't live without you, buddy, that like we tell all our little secrets to. And then we have our other friends who we, might have lunch with every once in a while and get together. Or maybe you have friends that you play a sport together with, or a card game, or a book club. Well, if you can do that with friends, why can't you do that in your relationship? Your partner is many things to you. Right? So you can love them in a variety of ways. I mean, obviously the commitment's there, but you don't have to love every part of of them. Like, you may not love that your partner golfs every weekend. However, you do love when they come home to you because they feel fulfilled. They did something they love, and now they have more to give to you. So whatever it is, maybe you're a yoga buff, and you would be miserable if every Saturday or Sunday your partner said, "Don't leave to go do yoga." Well, but that yoga makes you feel good, and it brings you back to the relationship, and it renews it. So, I just wanted to clarify what I meant.
Yeah, it's important. I think that all couples eventually get resourced outside of their relationship, and don't make the partner the wellspring of nourishment, because that will run dry pretty quickly. And you helped me realize, I forgot all about it, that I'm married. I'm my 5th year, and I'm loving it. But my best friend is one of my ex-partners that I had for 7 years, and she's like part of the family for me at the moment. And I feel the emotion in my heart as I feel into that, because it would be such a waste to let go of that relationship. And you have to put the work in to transform that relationship into something else, by allowing yourself to go and work through the suffering or the pain or the hurt in your own being, so that you can look again with fresh eyes and redefine the relationship. And whether that's an ex, or whether it's whatever it is, there's work involved. And I really, what you're talking about here, I'm loving this, what you're incubating for them. And it's such a sacred thing when they come into your office. I think other lawyers, solicitors, they miss that point. There's a moment where they are looking to people of authority to direct them into a massive life change position.
Mm-hmm.
You're pausing everything and saying, let's come into the heart here. Let's get real. Okay, look, let's slow it down a little bit. And I think that's just so important and so needed, that we have these safe havens to get real.
Sure. Sure. I mean, look, if someone wants me to be their lawyer and help them through that process of, uncoupling their marriage and divorcing them, I'll do that. But it's not my first go-to. If I have an inkling that maybe a relationship has some potential to be saved, I would rather be remembered for that. That's what I'd rather be remembered for. Because you know what? Enough people are going to break up that it's not that my doors are going to close, but I would far more would rather people say, maybe you should go visit Leslie, the lawyer. She has some ideas that maybe can help you out, before saying, okay, here, give me a big fat retainer, sign of the, and just goes head on, like in this almost robotic process to, ending a family. I'm just not that way. I just feel like I have this sense of justice since I'm a child to kind of really explain the facts of life as I've seen them, because, people look at the outside, right? So that's like the title of my book, The Cult of the Black Card, the American Express Black Card. When people see it, people think, wow, right? They're like, they have a black card. Their life must be great. Well, the whole thing about the Cult of the Black Card is that it's a myth. It really was a myth originally, by the way. It wasn't a real card. It became one. But it's a myth. Don't look at the front. You don't know the work that person's put in to get where they got. If you want what someone else has, then you got to be willing to work for it, right? In your own right, to get to where you want to go. And that's in relationships. If you know a couple that you admire and you've known them a long time, not just surface wise, maybe you've spent time with them, and they seem to have this symbiotic relationship that has love, wit, a little bit of sass because they've been together, and you want that, then you got to be willing to put the work in to get that yourself in your own relationship. Those things don't just happen in a vacuum, and they don't happen overnight. Like you said, you got to put the work in. So this month, I'm with my husband 25 years. And we met 25 years ago and were married in 4 months. So, yes, there's definitely have been some really challenging moments because we really got to know. I always say we got married and then spent the first 5 years of our marriage dating. But we just knew we wanted to be together. And, as a woman, a wife, mother, career person, I've sometimes stepped back and wondered, is he really happy, like, with our relationship, where we're headed? I definitely do that. I call that self-inventory. Like,
Absolutely.
am I growing? Am I meeting my own expectations? Am I devoting my time to the relationship? Am I hearing my partner when he tells me something? Not complaining, but I'm hearing there's a wish in there, or am I hearing and respecting that? And am I doing everything I can to make sure he knows that I'm hearing that? And I do find that he's as still deeply committed as I am, because I definitely find my own way to ask that question by hearing his needs and, taking him back to times when we were younger, didn't have a child, didn't have other responsibilities. And together we forge new bonds, you know. But it's work. It's work. So people see us and they think, "Oh, you're fabulous." I'm like, "We are, but we're sometimes fabulously terrible, and we have to work at it to be fabulously successful together." Because, he's also my business partner. He does something different, but like we really have a whole life together, a business life together, and it takes work, but you got to want to put it in, you know.
I was wondering, Leslie, why we get on so well together, and I just worked it out. Is that I met my partner, and after 4 months, I married her as well. So
So there you go.
we're in the 4 month club,
The
and
4 month club.
so yeah, and I'm saying I'm on my 5th year, and I think yeah we've been dating as well. It's called a marriage, but we're very much committed and in love, and
Great.
I think yeah, my therapist would have had a lot to say about it back then, but for me it was like my heart knew,
Yeah.
and it just because I had a long period where I was celibate, and I really wanted to get clear in myself, and when I saw my wife, and I knew right away. So it's like, and then the trusting of the relationship and the commitment and the work that's involved really really helps. And so I just want to let us wind down here a little bit. And what really stood out today is just this heart space of foundationally, really educating the people coming in about a more worldly view of options and insights around a sensitivity and a keen eye to be able to see or feel into and give hope, inject hope into where they may feel like there's hopelessness, or where there is nothing but hate or vengeance or despair, where there can be a loving, non-colluding, separate other who's there to say, there's maybe another way here. And to have that totem amongst the storm is it feels like such a breath of fresh air. And I think the society, if any of the law societies or any of the people who design colleges around lawyers, I think this needs to be injected into that whole world, because it's missing. And I'm also hearing what a wonderful orientation it is for you, Leslie, to not be in that, yeah, let's get a retainer, and just where there's a wonderful exchange happening that's not just like financial. It feels like your soul is getting nourished by the choice of going against the grain of your profession in a way, to be able to offer this service. And I think that's very profound. And I feel, I don't ever think I'll be in your office. I'm working really hard to stay in this marriage,
I
but
think you'll be in my office.
But I think anybody who who are struggling in the States, I'll be sending them your way. So guys, Leslie, thank you. Any final words for people who are heading off, thinking about that the marriage is not working, not liking the partner much, not communicating very much, feeling lost, feeling disempowered, feeling sort of forgotten in the marriage? What would you say to them?
I would say, first of all, you're not alone. Everyone goes through rough times. You have to know that you're okay and you're going to be okay regardless of your decision, and that you really have to take a step back and think about what's making you unhappy. Make a list. You know, don't necessarily talk to friends because they may not give you the right advice at the time. Maybe do a little reading for yourself and figure out what it is that's bringing you down. Don't look at your other partner. Take your own self inventory. And once you do that, I think that you start to find a way to figure out what could be next for yourself, or for you and your partner, um, and really turn inward. Give yourself the permission to love yourself the way you want to be loved by yourself, and ask yourself, am I getting that from my partner? And if I'm not, it's okay to say we need to have a conversation, and not when they walk in from work, and not in the middle of when you're having a party with friends, a time that you set aside. And don't be accusatory. Set the wheels in motions to say, things are changing and I'm not really sure what they are. Can we talk about it? And you might be surprised by the responses. um, I give a lot of free information on my website at AskLeslieTheLawyer.com. People can visit it, not just on what you should be thinking about if you want a divorce, but relationship advice, thinking about, your spouse and working on yourself. So if you visit my website, there's tons of advice there, and there's a way to reach me through there, through my law office, or through my email, which is also Leslie at AskLeslieTheLawyer.com. So you could do that. And if you get a chance and you do read my book,
Where can you get it on? We can get it on Amazon.
You can get it on Amazon. If you do read it, you're going to come out feeling far more hopeful than you would expect. It's full of my life experiences combined with what I've learned as a divorce lawyer. And from the response I get, it makes people feel good. Like, it makes them feel better about their own life, and gives a lot of hope. So that's what I could say for today. And hopefully we'll be talking again.
Well, I would love to talk again. And the responses I got today from clients around people having so many questions and things. So for the viewers out here, we are in the middle of working out how to do a series of so you can get well prepped to be able to message in and let us know about the questions, the struggles, the challenges that you have. If troubles come in every relationship.
Every relationship.
And there's no magical couple that doesn't have any trouble, or if there's no trouble, then that's a different sort of trouble.
Right. That's a different sort of trouble.
It's a different sort of trouble. So yeah, we're working on being able to answer those responses by coming on more regular, and we'll let you know about that. And Leslie, come here. Thank you for your heart, and thank you for your service to the world.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Nigel. It's great to speak with you. I love speaking with you. I think that we're really on the same page. So I look forward to many more conversations.
We're in that 4-month club, we got it dialed in. And for anybody who's got, whether you're listening live today or you are coming in on the replay, if you enjoy what you've seen, please exercise your muscles and just kind of reach out and get that daily exercise in there, and hit that like button, subscribe or share, or pass it on to a friend who might be struggling. And then if we're going to, and again, if you want to contact Leslie, in the link below is all her contact details. And if you want to message me around anything to do with this, please just hit the Wellbeing's website. But for now, everyone, thank you. And I hope that there's more sort of hope in your hearts to know that you can get through the turbulence to some solid ground. And thank you, Leslie, for plotting the course for the solid ground for us all to come back to in times of turmoil and stress. Thank you. And thank you for listening.
Thanks so much, Nigel. Take care.
See you now. Bye-bye.